This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ping.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
Welcome to Life Mastery with Todd Allen, the talk radio show that dives into the science of higher consciousness. Join Todd and his guests weekly at 10 a.m. Pacific Time and learn how to live a peaceful life with intentional mastery. Enjoy a survey of inspiring topics such as abundance, intention, health, manifestation, love, and transformation. It's all right here. Leading authors, speakers, coaches, entrepreneurs with stories and messages to support your well-being, let alone your most evocative dreams.
Hey, it's another groovy day, and most of you know why that is, because I make it that way. When I got up this morning, I already decided it was going to be a groovy day, and as I go throughout the day, it even becomes more groovier. And guess what? The sun just came out nice and bright, so it's really going to be groovy today. And I get to hang out with some really cool people, and we get to talk about some really cool things that are on the forefront of our own becoming, and we get to shine light on them and just really investigate them. So that's what Life Mastery is, a talk show that brings you great thoughts and ideas for you to use on your very own life mastery journey or your friends. So make sure you tell a friend about the show and let them know how groovy it is. There we go. That's my favorite word if you haven't figured it out. But before we get started, I always like to get myself centered, situated, and in the groove. If we just take a minute, maybe stretch a little bit. And I want you to think about what it is that you connect to that gives you power. It could be the tree outside your window, God, the dude, Allah, whatever it is. Just focus on that just for a minute and think about it. And let's take in a deep breath. And just let your essence flow out with a big ah. And let your essence flow up through your heart center, throat chakra, out of your speaker box and out into the universe. And connect to that which you get power from. Let's do that one more time. This time, think about those dreams, visions, and goals, or those aspirations. What is it that you want to do, become, be, bring into your life? Think about those for a minute. For me, it's a 1952 Chevy pickup that I'm restoring. It's pretty cool. But I'm thinking about it. Take in a deep breath. And let that breath out with big ah. And let those dreams, visions, and goals flow right through you, out of your speaker box, out into the universe. And for sure, allow the universe the opportunity to make those come true for you. Yep, that truck's almost done. No, it's not almost done. It's going to be a lot of work, but I'm going to do it.
How long have you been working on it?
I've had it for a couple years.
Okay.
And I got it running and started investigating. And now I've decided that I'm going to completely dismantle the whole thing and put it all back together. So it's kind of, and get rid of all the rust and get it all nice and painted and nice and spiffy, and it'll be pretty cool. It's 9 years older than I am. That's how cool.
Well, I've always wondered about those situations when people are restoring vehicles like that. Where do you find all of the original parts and the original paints and stuff?
There are many outlets. This is pretty, although my truck's rare, but the body style is pretty common. And there are many, many outlets that have aftermarket parts or refurbished parts, or I don't have any trouble finding the parts that I need now. Nice. They might be kind of expensive.
Yeah. That would go without saying. Okay.
And there are some parts that you just can't find, but there are updates and upgrades that you can do.
And so what is the goal once you're done with it, or is the process the fun part?
For me, it's probably the process.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a cool thing. It's a cool old truck, and it's the kind of truck, Jackie, that you see people taking their wedding photos around. So
Okay.
maybe I can rent it out.
There you go. That works.
It's
Maybe you
pretty
could, if it's drivable, you could even.
Oh, it will be drivable. It's drivable now. I could drive it around. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Cool. So you could even take it to the wedding and they could get the pictures with it there. So
there you go.
Yeah. Nice.
As always, I have my co-host with me today. She's already been interviewing me. Can you believe it? She's just that interviewing type. That's probably why she's on Life Master Radio. You know what, Jackie? I was listening to the opening of the show, and we got to get Cam to change that, or we got to write a new ditty because it just says Life Master Radio with Todd. Where's Jackie? I was thinking
like I'm chopped liver or something. What?
I know she's a big part of the show. Okay, now let's flip the script. And Jackie, how's it going?
It's going well.
I know,
yes. We started a new class today and another new class tomorrow. And we're just reaching a lot of kids now, and it's working out well. We've got a program that we're helping with, another nonprofit that's called Jeff's Place. And Jeff's Place is a nonprofit organization that serves grieving families. So this is adults and children that are left behind after, in most cases, a tragic or sudden death of a family member. And this organization works with these families for as long as they need it. And most of the time, my understanding is that it's up to 3 or 4 years of time that they support these families. And so they've asked the Speak Feed Lead Project to come and host just a fun family improvisation night where these families can just have fun together and maybe even a little competition against other families. So we're hosting that next week. And we're looking for some funding for that project so we can ensure we've got enough teachers and people available to help with that. And in fact, today and tomorrow is a big fundraising event in the state of Washington that's actually called Give Big WA. And the Speak Feed Lead Project is part of that large grassroots effort to raise money for nonprofits in the state of Washington. So if you are of a giving heart and you would like to check out our campaign, you can go to givebigwa.org/the Speak Feed Lead Project. Givebigwa.org/the Speak Feed Lead Project, and you can see our campaign there.
I think it's on our Facebook page too, isn't it?
It
Jackie?
is. Yeah.
Or you can go to Life Master Radio. Everybody should have that bookmark. You
okay.
should be following it, and
Yeah.
just go to Life Master Radio with Todd and Jackie.
But a lot of donors feel more comfortable going to another organization like that and looking at all the different organizations that can use their help. And, you can search for ones that help kids or ones that help domestic violence victims, like we're going to learn about today. So there's all kinds of causes there that speak to your heart, and you're welcome to give to any of them, and hope that you do. So.
You're busy. You're making me dizzy. You know that? I'm just like, and then I think you have a speech contest for young people on Thursday night too. How do you find time
to breathe?
A week from
Thursday.
It's a week. Well, we got another week. Okay. If you need help with that, you haven't asked.
I do need help with that.
Okay.
Calling all Toastmasters that can help with the speech contest. We've got a gavel club. So those are kids that are age 10 to 17, and they're competing against each other in a speech contest. So that'll be fun.
It's not only that, these kids are speaking from the heart. They're speaking about things that are important to them or experiences they've had. And you watch these kids and they are just amazing. It's pretty cool stuff. Get your kid involved today.
When you give a child a stage and a voice, you get to, it's so inspiring because you think, they're kids. They don't have any life experience. But I'll tell you what, they have enough experience that when they speak, it is inspiring. Well, and if you never had that opportunity, you need to find an opportunity to hear these kids speak, because it's
and this gives them the experience of speaking that, right, and how it is to articulate their thoughts and ideas and speak from the heart and let it out there, and the return on investment on something like this, you just don't. Money can't buy that kind of thing.
No. And yeah, when you're competing, you really have to up your game a little bit. You have to be very concise and clear on your message, and you have to give a call to action that's inspiring to the audience. So it does help you become a better speaker, just simply competing.
Yeah, check it out. You can go to speakfeedlead.org and find out more. Jackie's got some cool classes for young adults and youngsters and little people. Yep. And it helps them find their voice. So that's what they are. They are little people. Okay. Today's show page is at www.lifemasteryradio.net. You can go there and find the link to our guest, her book, and anything else that we talk about while you're there. Sign up for the newsletter. Jackie spends a lot of time creating a newsletter every week, and it highlights who's been on the show, who's coming on the show, and a blog post about the show that we just did. It's pretty cool, and you can get that right in your email and be up to date with what's going on at Life Mastery Radio. While you're there, too, you can check out both of our books. We have links there, and mine is 6 Keys to Life Mastery, and Jackie's is Self-Centered Leadership. So they're really cool. It takes you right to Amazon. After you read them and love them, go back to Amazon and tell us what you think.
Give us some thumbs up.
Okay, sign up for the newsletter. Check out our books. Check out the show page. I think that the next thing is for Jackie to introduce our guest.
Yes, I am.
Take it away, Jackie.
Michelle is a recent acquaintance of mine, and I'm delighted to let her share her story with us today because she is an international philanthropist, speaker, author, and a coach. In July 2017, Michelle founded Unsilenced Voices, a 501c3 nonprofit focused on inspiring change in communities around the globe by encouraging victims to break free and survivors to speak up about domestic violence and sexual assault. My mission is a lot like her mission. Her desire to help victims of domestic abuse came from personal experience in such a relationship. She has since completed and published her personal memoir, But I Love Him. He is recognized as a valuable resource in the speaking industry, and Michelle Jewsbury is the go-to professional speaker who uses her story of survival as encouragement and motivation for others. With a confident yet calming approach, Michelle's story makes a lasting impression on the audience and gives them the power to take their lives back. We all need to do that from time to time. So please welcome to Life Mastery Radio and hear her story, Michelle Jewsbury. Yay, Michelle!
Yay. Thank you so much, Jackie. Thank you so much, Todd. I'm super excited to be on this show and to share with your audience some of the injustices that are happening and then how you can break free. So awesome to be here. Thank you.
Yes, well, we're so glad you are because it happens so much. And my understanding is that domestic violence has risen pretty sharply because of the pandemic.
It has, yes.
The lockdown was supposed to save us from disease, but in a lot of cases, it just gave abusers more opportunity to abuse, and it's very sad.
What are some of the statistics, Michelle? Clue us in on what the statistics are, I guess.
Yeah, great. So, if you want, I can backtrack a little bit as to why I actually know some of these statistics. So a little bit about me, I grew up in North Idaho and moved my whole life. My daddy was military. And when I was about 16 years old, I wanted to have a real job. At that time, I was babysitting. I loved babysitting, but I wanted like a W-2 job, which I don't understand why. And my mom was a manager, so she had trained me in a restaurant. So restaurant industry for over 15 years. I worked my way from hostess to server to back of the house to bartender and manager. And I loved the restaurant industry. And the reason being is I got to interact with people. And just like that we're here interacting, we can learn about one another. And I've always had an interest in psychology and sociology. When I was about 20 years old, I wanted something more. So I decided to pack up my car to and drive my happy little butt to Hollywood, California to be a movie star. And I loved it. You know, things were going well. I was starring in independent films and plays, and I really thought that I was on my way to stardom. And then I ended up meeting somebody, this blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy, swept me off my feet, courted me, sent me flowers and gifts, amazing text messages, and we had an awesome time together for about 4 months. And then after 4 months, that was the first sign of physical violence in our relationship. And I stayed with my abuser for 4 years. During those 4 years, I endured psychological manipulation, financial abuse, physical violence, and sexual violence. And when you're involved in something like that, me growing up, I never witnessed domestic violence. I never witnessed any type of abuse in my household. My mom and my dad loved very much, and we never even saw my dad yell at my mother or vice versa. I didn't realize what it was that I was going through. And then when I finally escaped after 4 years, I sat in front of my computer, very similar to what we're all doing at home, sitting in front of our computers. And I began to document my story. And when I began to document that story, it first came out in a play format, me being the theater major that I have. And I ended up writing and performing a 65-minute solo play about my experience in domestic violence, and performing that in 2016. And then what happened next is people started coming up to me and telling me their stories of abuse, telling me their stories of sexual violence, child abuse, injustices, and primarily gender discrimination and gender injustices. And I decided I had to do something even more. And I know a lot of us at home, we know that our stories matter. And we know that just because we went through a certain experience, it doesn't define who we are, but we can use our stories to help other people. And that's what I decided. Yeah, totally. And that's what I decided. I said, okay, I'm going to start a nonprofit. So in 2017, I founded a nonprofit organization called Unsilenced Voices to help survivors of domestic violence and sexual abuse worldwide. We're in Ghana, Sierra Leone, and expanding to the US this year, which we'll talk about here in a bit. And I wrote my first book called But I Love Him, published that in 2019, working on my second book now called Overcoming Obstacles. Hopefully that should be released by Q4 of this year.
Yay.
And I've been, yay. And I've been speaking on stages worldwide. March 2020, I was actually stuck in Egypt, coming back when the world was shutting down, speaking at the Women's Economic Forum and checking on our projects in Ghana and Sierra Leone, and done a ton of virtual events now, which is great. And we have got a lot of live and virtual events coming up, which we will talk about as well. But that's why I know where statistics come from, because I lived it. So here in the United States, Todd, to answer your question in a long roundabout way, 1 in 3 to 4 women experience domestic violence. 1 in 4 women experience sexual violence. 1 in 11 men in the US, which I believe is an underreported statistic, experience domestic violence. And this is not talking about internationally. At least 1/3 of the women worldwide experience domestic violence.
Wow, it's that prevalent.
It is that prevalent. And actually, when I was in Ghana, I was able to talk to a woman who worked with the Domestic Violence and Victim Support Unit in Ghana. And on paper, the statistics show about 36%. And the woman, the chief director who I was speaking with, said that those statistics are typically double.
Oh, yeah. I
So
was going
we're
to say,
talking,
because those are just the women that are reporting something. but
Exactly.
most of them do not.
Yeah. And in a lot of developing countries, it's a family issue. So they don't get reported. Statistics are not talked about. And it's typically blamed on the victim. You know, why did you trigger him? Why weren't you a better wife? And in order to make significant change, we have to talk about what's actually happening. And we have to give encouragement to those survivors and those victims, because no matter what culture you are brought up in, if you're from India or South America or parts of Egypt, you never should be beaten or emotionally humiliated or sexually assaulted, and it's never your fault. Yeah. So we believe that education is how we can change that.
Well, Jackie and I were talking before the show, and we kind of got into a little discussion about it. And so a big question that hit my mind is, are the perpetrators victims too? I mean, what happens to people that makes them act this way? Because to me, it's disgusting and it is not natural. And so I'm really curious, how does this all evolve into this? I know some countries, it's part of their culture. I mean, their mistreatment of women in those kinds of ways, but not in the United States. It's not.
Well, it's interesting that a lot of people think that the U.S. is the best country in the world, and the U.S. Has better schooling, and the U.S. has this or that. It's not. I do a lot of traveling. We are a world community. It is not just the U.S. against 200 and something other countries in this world, right? So I've been to other first world countries like London, like parts of Italy and Spain, Ireland, who have domestic violence issues that are even more prevalent than what we're doing in the U.S. And to talk about the United States, women's rights are actually really being taken away from us again. And this is an uphill battle that we are fighting. So your question originally was, are the abusers victims as well? And yes, typically I believe in rehabilitation of the abusers, because hurt people tend to hurt people. So the reason why typical domestic violence happens is because the abuser, whether a man or a woman, has a lot of underlying conditions, whether it's anger issues, depression, anxiety, abuse that they experienced growing up, witnessing domestic violence when they were younger, being involved in gangs, etc. There's a lot of different reasons why it happens, and not one story is like another. Yeah. But yes, I believe that it's definitely cyclical. And if you extreme violence or any type of trauma growing up, you have two ways to go. You either decide to fight against it, or you end up joining in.
Well, and that's why I believe that the statistics of 1 in 11 men are abused have to be completely off, because those the abusers are likely those who have been abused in some way, but they're not reporting it. Perhaps because there's no one to report it to. So the fact that 1 in 3 women are being abused means that there's far more men that have been abused or witnessed it that aren't speaking up. They're not talking about it, but they're turning to that alternative of, I'm going to now be a perpetrator of abuse.
Perpetrator, yeah, you got
it. Yeah, it took me a minute to get that word out. But
it's okay, right? It is quite interesting, and a lot of the reason that it's underrated is men want to keep their manhood, right? And they don't want to be like, oh, my girlfriend slapped me, or my wife spit on me, or somebody threw a plant at me, and women, out there, I want to talk to you for a second. Yelling at your husband or boyfriend, hitting them, slapping them, that's violence. And using your words and your physical actions against somebody else is violence. So a lot of people don't understand that emotional abuse is actually a form of violence. People don't understand that, us being adults, especially if you are triggered, take a breath and walk. Don't participate and then have a huge big blowout where somebody could eventually get killed. We're adults. We need to act like adults.
Because the actual physical and sexual violence isn't the first thing that happens, right? It's usually the emotional, it's the berating, it's because in your case, talk a little bit about how, because your book is titled But I Love Him, which really states a lot about the mindset of the abused, is that, there you go. But this guy was nice. He's handsome. He treats me well. And somehow that's how it starts. But in your book, you clearly state that there is this pattern to where they're almost grooming. You're almost grooming someone to be their victim, and they're doing it whether it's conscious or not. You very wisely, and I'm thankful that you do put in this cycle of what that looks like before the probably the most dangerous abuse can take place, where your life is really at risk. So maybe tell us a little bit about how you can get involved with someone like that and stay with that person for 4 years living such a nightmare.
Yeah. So in the beginning of the relationship, he courted me, he loved me, he told me he wanted to spend his life with me. We were building a family together. You know, we would imagine having children and traveling the world. And it was a Jekyll and Hyde type of perspective. And a lot of people who are not familiar with domestic violence tend to think that underprivileged women get trapped in abuse. But actually, it's very affluent women who get trapped just as much. So educated, highly professional women are trapped in abusive relationships with men who are very controlling, who are very manipulative. And it is the Jekyll and Hyde, where out in public, he seems like he is this wonderful servitude type of soul. And behind closed doors, he beats the hell out of you. And it's really hard to combat that. And for me, I was scared, right? That was one of the issues. I was very scared. He used to tell me that if I said anything, he would tie a 2x4 to my feet and throw me overboard in the middle of the ocean. He would threaten my family. But then the reason why most victims stay trapped in abusive relationships aren't the threats, but it's the idea that he or she that they will stop the abuse. So the cycle of domestic violence goes from walking on eggshells to a big blow up, whether that blow up is emotional, sexual, physical by nature. And then the apology stage. That apology stage is the reason why most victims stay trapped. So sorry, Michelle, I love you so much. I was triggered. I promise I won't ever do that again. I'm going to work on myself. I need help. Right. And you being the victim in that situation, 100% believes the abuser, and the abuser at that moment believes it as well. Yeah. So you stay trapped, and that apology stage can last 2 weeks, 2 months, 3 years before the walking on eggshells and the blow up again. Wow. So it is this vicious cycle that goes round and around and around. And in order to actually break free from that cycle, say you want to stay with your abuser, the abuser has to take responsibility he or she is doing and take initiative to help themselves, whether it's traditional or non-therapy, being able to tell their story as to why they're so hurt inside. Because like we talked about earlier, hurt people hurt people. Mm-hmm. So there were many red flags going into this relationship, like I do explain in my book. My book is very graphic, by the way. If you are listening at home, I go into some grave detail, a lot of the physical, emotional, and sexual violence that happens. But I think that it's necessary. But a lot of those flags were, to the a waitress appropriately. He wouldn't let me have a voice. He would order for me and tell me where to go and what to do. He moved the relationship too fast, too forward, right? He, within 4 months, I was living with him. I was isolated. I had moved away from my community and church and friends and family. And I was solely dependent on him. And then, he ended up massaging me to believe that I didn't have to work. He didn't want me to work. He would take care of me. And the first time that happened, it was a huge fight. But then he started to make me believe that he would take care of me and that I would be okay. And I don't need my independence. And me being a strong, independent woman, he was so incredibly convincing. That I believed everything that came out of his voice, everything that came out of his mouth. And I was like, okay, well, we'll do this. And this is why I stayed 4 years. You know, he had trapped me, and I really believed that he would change. We went through couples counseling together, which is not a very good idea, by the way. No, couples counseling with an abuser is not good, because then the victim really have a voice in therapy. You need to do separate therapy. But he made me believe he was really trying. And lo and behold, he didn't. You know, he ended up assaulting a woman after me and facing time in jail. And I can't really talk a lot about that aspect, but I ended up taking my power back from him and making sure that he knew what he was doing was wrong, because the repercussion is necessary.
You know, Michelle, I got to tell you, I have a hard time rationalizing this ping pong game that you just described, and it just blows me away. And as you're talking about it, it almost seemed to me like maybe there's some addiction going on, right? I mean, what did you get the feeling that you were addicted to him, and that's because I've always tried to understand why do they stay? Why do they go back? Why do they allow that person back into their life when the abuse is so destructive?
Todd, are you married?
Or what?
Are you married? Are you seeing anybody right now?
I've been with the same woman for about 12 years, I think, and I have been married before. Yeah. Okay,
so 12 years. So about 6 years into your relationship, your wife throws a tantrum and slaps you and kicks you out of the house and spits on you. And then the next day comes to you and says, "I'm so sorry, Todd. I didn't mean to do that. I apologize. I promise it's not going to happen again. I've had a long day at work. The kids were driving me nuts today," whatever that looks like. And then you, being with that same woman for those 6 years, say, "Okay, well, that was the first time that happened. I'm sure she won't do that to me again." It's the same type of mentality that we have. Yes, I'm sure that won't happen again. It was a mishap. It was an accident that you beat me for 4 hours. Right? I know it's really hard for you to understand, but that's what and how we think. And then the next time it happens, "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do it again. I'm really, really trying to work off." And when you asked me, is it an addiction? It's not necessarily an addiction, but it's a codependency on both parties.
That's the only thing that allows us to rationalize the irrational behavior, right?
Yeah. I mean, it does. You know, it is irrational behavior, but unfortunately, it's irrational behavior by more than 50% of the world population.
Yeah.
And when we start talking about different cultures and different countries and the mentality there. I remember I flew to Ghana. This was a couple of years ago now. And we flew up to the northern region of Ghana. And when I was in the northern region, I was able to talk to groups of women. And when I was speaking to the women about how their husbands should not beat them, I was
chastised, probably.
Spoken to in a way. Chastised, spoken to in a way from the women that, wait, no, you're wrong. Husband doesn't beat me. It means he doesn't love me. It's not the bringing Western culture to different countries, but it's just education about morals and values and self-worth.
What's right and what's wrong.
Yeah, what's right and what's wrong. And it is very difficult. I mean, we're not even talking about statistics of human trafficking. We got to think, yes, domestic violence is horrid and it's disgusting and it happens to so many people. And there are so many individuals, Todd, like yourself, who it's really hard to wrap your mind around, because it does sound like an addiction. It sounds like something that should be easy to break free from, but it's not easy. Yeah. And with human trafficking, the statistics, according to Liberation Foundation, here in the US, over 200,000 kids are being trafficked within our borders. Wow. 18 million children being trafficked outside our borders. And the number one consumer of human trafficking is white American males. Meaning they traveled to other countries and they purchase little boys and little girls at 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. And sometimes you don't recognize human trafficking. Here in the US, the reason why it's so prevalent is because that young girl on the streets that you think is, this is not a good word to say, a prostitute, a sex worker, right, is actually forced there. They're forced there because that individual has threatened them and their family. They may have been taken away from their family. And it's so difficult to rehabilitate those victims and survivors because they've been trafficked for 5, 10, 15 years, and it's all they know. So when you try to take them out of that situation, they end up going back sometimes, just like with domestic violence. Yeah, it's a cycle with domestic violence. I ended up leaving Paul 5, 6, 7 different times, going back before I finally broke free from the situation.
And even then it was tough for you, right? I mean, you found yourself fighting that urge
Missing
or that
him.
need. Yeah, missing. Yeah.
Yeah, because
I
there's
missed
so
him.
much manipulation, right? That's the thing that happens even with the children who are trafficked. Many times they are drugged, right? They become addicted to a drug at the age of 5 or 6, so that they are completely dependent on this other person for food, for clothing, for everything, right? And so once you learn this dependence on somebody, you can't just walk away, because what would you have? Where would you go? What would you do? And so even though it's an adult woman in your situation, the mindset is easily trained to be the same way. And these guys know what they're doing. They know how to manipulate you. And they know exactly what to say and how to treat you when the times are good. And that's the thing times are so great. He's better now. You know, he loves me. And then all of a sudden you say the wrong thing, you know, or you put on the wrong pair of shoes, and all of a sudden, bam.
Yeah. I remember one time with my abuser, we were having a great night and he wanted me to go put on some sexy lingerie. And I wasn't feeling like sexy at the time. and I was like, yeah, you know, I don't really have anything to wear. That caused the biggest fight ever. He's like, I pay for this, and F you, and this, and B, all these awful words, and just berating me
guilt
with
trip
it.
you, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then I'm like, oh, okay, well, because you're telling me I'm going to go change into what you want, because you're telling me that you pretty much run my whole life, control me. There were multiple times where we fought and he isolated me and made me quit my job. So I didn't have money. So I was fully dependent on him financially. There were many times where we fought and I wanted to leave, and he told me, well, you'd have to walk out naked because I own everything you have.
It's crazy. But for you to believe that, though, Michelle, for you to buy into that, and that's kind of what.
But at that point, it wasn't that I believed that. At that point, if I didn't listen to him, he was going to beat me up even worse. At that point,
you have to
already assaulting
every
me.
moment. You have to survive.
You got to pick your battles.
That's right. However you can survive in any given moment, that's what you have to do. Yep. And you can't, because you don't know what was really the possibility is that could happen to you. And so when he's saying, well, if you leave, it's going to have to be naked because I own everything. Well, at that point, you're just like, okay, well, then I have to just be subservient here and do what he wants, because otherwise the other side is too horrible to think of. And most of the time it probably happens.
Well, I tried to leave.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. But I did try to leave when I did. I was like, okay, well, because he was beating me up. I was like, yes, I don't care if I'm naked. I mean, at that point I was covered in blood and bruises. I needed to get out of the house, but then he wouldn't let me leave then either. You know, he would say that and then still not let me leave and throw me around. So, it's a very tough topic to talk about. And Todd, I love having this conversation with you, because a lot of our listeners may not understand this cycle as well. Like, why didn't she leave? She was there 4 years, 4 months, right? I get this all the time. 4 months, there was the first sign of physical violence. Why didn't you leave then? Well, it was because of the allure, the life that we imagined together.
Well, I've always understood it too, Michelle, and because I've always pondered this. I've been involved in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I've heard multiple stories just like yours, and it's just like, And I've always come to the understanding that a person becomes addicted to another person, and then breaking that cycle and breaking free it takes every bit of energy and just all you can do to get away and stay away.
Yeah, and that does explain some relationships, but not all of them, for sure.
Yeah.
So how did you get out of this one, Michelle? What was the final point when you could make your break and you took it?
Yeah, so in every relationship, in order to actually break free, you need a breaking point. And for me, that breaking point was when I found out he was having affairs on me. I subconsciously was like, okay, well, you could beat me, emotionally abuse me, sexually assault me, but you cheat on me. I lost my mind. I mean, I don't exactly know why. That was just me, right? I do not appreciate cheating. I couldn't stand it. So then I melted. I was drinking every night. I was crying all the time. And then he decided, why don't you go home for a little while so you can thinking that I would come back to him. And I said, okay, right? He actually let me go. I was very fortunate that does not happen. He let me go physically, but emotionally and financially, he was still controlling me. And that last year I was with him, I tore my ACL and my father died. So emotionally, I was not okay. I needed to get surgery, and then I lost my daddy, and I love my daddy. I miss him much. And I ended up staying with Paul, and my final breaking point was November of 2015 when I received a phone call. And this phone call was his next girlfriend, and her head had just gone through the window in our home, and she decided that she was going to press charges. And that's when I had a huge decision to make. I was still in contact with Paul. I was still, quote unquote, allowing him to help me, right? And then I decided, okay, I don't care what happens to my credit anymore, because he would always threaten my credit. I had a great credit score, and then he demolished it all. He co-signed with me that I couldn't afford. There was a lot of financial repercussions, and I was scared. I mean, just like anybody would be scared for their livelihood. I was scared. Where the hell am I going to go then? How can you get an apartment with a credit score of 400?
Yeah.
So I made that decision. I said, okay, I'm done. I'm completely done. And contacted the DA and said, I'll help. And I sent Paul an email saying, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do. I just know that from now on, you need to go through attorneys. And that was the end. And that was our uphill battle. I ended up taking a lawsuit out against him, which took like 4.5 years to finally, and he served repercussion as well. And I really hope to this day, I've learned forgiveness, and I hope to this day that he has forgiven himself and taken the necessary steps to heal, because the reason why he was the way he was because a lot of childhood experiences he had that he shared with me, which that was another reason. I was his savior. I knew about some of the things that he went through, so I thought I could help him. And if you go on Amazon and read some of the reviews to my book, one of the people, I've never said this on air before, so now I am, was like, well, she was just in it for the money, so I don't like reading her story, right? And it's really a mindset of they just don't understand.
Right.
It wasn't the money at all. I truly did love him. And really the money, he financially controlled me. It's not that he gave me cash, and I lost everything afterwards. My credit, like I said, went from 850 to 400. And now, this is later. But I had to go through some ups and downs. And when people don't understand something, then they rate it, then they blame the victim. And that's what happens way too often, is we blame the victim for sexual and physical violence.
Yep. I mean, we even do it with children, for heaven's sakes. We blame children who have been abused, and it's just not fair. It's not right. And So this lawsuit then that you had, now you were never married to Paul, correct?
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Were you guys ever planning a wedding at any point like that? Had you gone that far into the relationship to do that?
We weren't actually planning a wedding, but we were planning to get married.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I had a question for you now. Oh, I know there's lots of women that are listening right now and they're thinking, oh gosh, my guy, even though sometimes he gets angry at me, he's not the same guy she's talking about. You immediately start to convince yourself, right? You start to defend the behavior of the other person. I mean, I don't know why we just do that, right? Yeah. So what would you say to someone? What's the first sign? What's something that perhaps happened with Paul the first time when that was a red flag and you should have gone, okay, I'm walking away right now, but didn't? Is there something you could share like that?
Yeah, of course. So to the people listening, when you're like, oh no, that's not him. My husband or my boyfriend wouldn't ever do some of those things. And maybe he did once, apologized, and it's fine, hasn't touched me since. My question to you is, what if you're wrong? Think even the slightest chance you could be wrong and he could hurt you again, right? So with my relationship, my first sign was when we got into an argument after I had completed a play, and we had like all of the cast members and the crew come to his hotel room, and he bought us drinks and whatever. We had a great night. Alcohol was flowing though, which also was a huge contributor to anger and aggression, right? I see Todd shaking his head yes. And at one point, one of my girlfriend's friends, right, brought me into the bathroom and started telling me, I don't know if I trust Paul. I don't think that he's good for you. Very cocky. He was very sure of himself. He threw money around like it was no big deal. He was a very well-off entrepreneur. And she just got the heebie-jeebies, quote unquote, from him.
Being around him.
And the bathroom walls were very thin. And Paul actually heard what she was saying. And after everybody had left the hotel, it was just me and Paul. And that's when he began to be weird. And I was like, what's wrong? He's like, I heard what she was saying, and you didn't stand up for me, and this and that. And then he gave me an ultimatum. You either choose your friend or you choose me. And this was before 4 months. This was, this must have been 3 months into the relationship. And I should have realized at that point that my friend was right, because I had known my friend longer than I had known him. Yeah. But I decided that the picture that we had painted together was going to be reality. I was going to fight tooth and nail to make that a reality. And
didn't he also claim that she had come on to him at the party, and that's why she was saying that, because she'd come on to him, and so he twisted it around to show you that he was actually one protecting you,
the good guy,
exactly,
right?
Yeah. And Jackie knows this, you guys, because she read my book. So, so now's the time where
I will tell you, Michelle, it is a hard book to read, but it has some very eye-opening experiences. And that's something, we just have about 10 minutes left. And you took this entire experience and now you are an advocate. And and how did that transformation occur? Did you get some insight? Did you hear something say, go this direction, or have you just been following your heart?
I believe it was God. I 100% believe that God's like, okay, we're going to make beautiful things out of these broken pieces.
Right.
And I believe that he does that. And I'm a very spiritual person. I'm not a Bible thumper. I'm not,
Have you always been spiritual though? I mean, did you find spiritual solace when you were in the middle of abuse? Did you ask for help, or did you just kind of hold it all in?
I did ask for help. I used to go on hikes and I used to scream at God. I would blame God. I would yell at God. Why is this happening? And growing up, I wasn't religious whatsoever. I didn't find God until 2010, which also is in my book. It's a very interesting scenario, and we don't have time to get into that right now. But I ended up finding God and then getting involved in that abusive relationship.
Yeah.
So I was like, what the heck? Why is this happening? Why can't you fix him? Is it me? Screaming at God. But after I had left, I could feel him hold me. I could feel him carry me. And I listened to what he was saying, because sometimes when you sit in silence, you can hear. Because God's voice is very loud only when everything around you is quiet. And I felt this calling. I felt this pull to start a nonprofit organization. And, my reassurance for that was, when I founded it, I did all the paperwork myself, and we were 503 within a month. I ended up meeting a doctor after that here in the United States who was Ghanaian and said, go to Ghana, stay with my family. I said, okay. I packed up my bags and went. I had contacts in Sierra Leone because I was VP for another organization prior to me starting my own. And when I was there, that's what we did. And now we impact thousands and thousands.
Yeah, this thing has really blossomed for you, right?
It is. Yes, this thing is growing, and it's not about me, but it's about
I get that.
all of the people that we can help. And you guys, if you're listening at home and you want to be a part of a movement of something that's taking charge and making change worldwide, we need your help. We have a live event happening July 22nd in Las Vegas. It's a fundraising and awareness event, and we're looking for sponsors. So if you run a business or a company or corporation, we need your help, and the sponsorship packages are great. And we are working with some amazing individuals. Our board is awesome. There are some big names coming on to kind of help grow Unsilenced Voices to be even more recognizable. But it's not about me. It's all about how we can impact. And we're planning a domestic violence, sexual abuse, and human trafficking awareness tour next year, where we'll go into a different city every month, hold a platform, right? Pay for this platform, have speakers come in and talk about some of these injustices and racial discrimination and what is happening in this world and how we can make change, empowerment, using your voice, just like the Speak, Feed, Lead project that Jackie is doing. It's using your voice to make a difference. So we are planning that. So
that's a curious question, Michelle. Did your voice need to be sequestered for it to be so loud today?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know how to answer that question. I just know that I've loved the theater. I've loved the stage. I've always loved, being in the spotlight. So that wasn't ever a question or a problem for me. But if I wouldn't have gone through this abusive relationship, I wouldn't be standing on the platform I am right now.
Right. And I wanted to say
many.
to Todd, when he says that it's hard to read your book, it's really important that a survivor be allowed to use whatever language he or she wants to use.
Totally.
Describe what happened to them. And that's really part of finding the voice and using your voice. If that's the language you need to use to heal, then that's what you should be open, be able to do that. And so, Michelle, I wish with all my heart that what happened to you had not happened to you, but I am so grateful that you are now doing what you are doing and helping so many people, so many women and men to understand their worth and their value and see themselves in a different way, and that they are worthy of healing from all of this. So I appreciate it.
And I thank you, Jackie. And I know we only have a couple of minutes left. So to your viewers and to your audience, if you want to get involved in Unsilenced Voices, please join me, email me, Michelle, MICHLE, at unsilencedvoices.org. Again, Michelle at unsilencedvoices.org. And to those of you listening that would like my book, I will do a giveaway right now. So the first person to text obstacles to 26786, and it's the word obstacles, OBSTACLES, to 26786. I will actually send you my entire manuscript via PDF For those of you that come in second and third and fourth and 10th, you'll receive a complimentary digital download of the introduction book and a place to purchase. So again, text the word obstacles to 26786.
That's awesome.
Michelle, thank you so much. You know, I get the feeling we've barely scratched the surface. So I hope you'll come back. Jackie will rebook you and we're going to continue on. You have another book coming out. I want to learn about that book too. You are an amazing and phenomenal voice for a lot of people. Keep going, girl. Don't stop, because the world needs to hear you.
Yeah,
I truly believe that. Thank you so much for showing up as you today.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Michelle.
Both very so important. Okay.
Yeah, an amazing show, and I hope you guys stay tuned, because we're gonna have Michelle come back, because there's so much more that we can give her a voice to. That's about all we have time for today. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you will tell a friend about the show and the amazing topics that Jackie and I come up with and talk about. They are truly life mastery tips for you and your friends to take and use on your very own life mastery journey. Lastly, choose to check out Michelle's book. You know somebody, her statistics, there's somebody that you know, somebody in your orbit. And lastly, please make it a great day, because it is all about choice. Thanks for tuning in, and bye-bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to Life Mastery with Todd Allen, the talk radio show that dives into the science of higher consciousness. Join Todd and his guests weekly at 10 a.m. Pacific Time and learn how to live a peaceful life. For more information on Todd and his guests, visit his website at www.lifemasteryradio.net. That's www.lifemasteryradio.net.